Mysterious underwater volcano that has been erupting had now a magnitude 5.4 earthquake and has another massive eruption, not only underwater. It is shooting the ash and volcanic matter up in the sky, producing volcanic pumice. Can this develop, I have to say, into another Tonga situation? Hunga Tonga, we remember that monstrosity. Is there a risk for a mega tsunami again? Guys, shizzy could hit the fizzy in the Bismarck Sea. Definitely, because I said it in my video yesterday. We have to watch. Will we see larger earthquakes? Will they increase? And I want you to look at that current earthquake map right now. I'm only going 7 days back. So have a look. You see the magnitude 5.4 here in the Bismarck Sea, where this underwater volcano is located. And you see the last few days when there were at least 2 eruptions that they could see on the satellite images. We see there was a 5.0 on May 9th, a 4.9 on May 8th, 4.9, there was a 4.6, so a 5.6, sorry, 4.6, 4.7, 4.6. So we're in the 5 right now. So this thing keeps coming at us. And I want to say that because Hunga Tonga did also not start with one, now I'm here and boom, this is the big shizzy that's hitting the fizzy. It started similar like that one. So let's have a closer look. This is no longer just a strange ash cloud over the Bismarck Sea that they have seen on satellite images. This is now a seismic crisis around an active underwater volcano. A shallow magnitude 5.4 earthquake just struck near the same volcanic zone that has already been sending ash up to aircraft levels, discoloring the ocean surface and showing signs of an active submarine eruption. And that's why Tonga matters so much, because Tonga already proved to us that underwater volcanoes can trigger tsunami waves through explosions, through flank collapse, landslides, and pressure waves, not just normal earthquake fault movement. This is happening near populated areas. You see Lorengau here, and let me change the map so that we see population density. So if something happens there with a tsunami or something like this, and of course ashfall as well, but you see these islands, and this is near Papua New Guinea as well. So when we see the Bismarck Sea here, if there was a tsunami event, there is population density in these areas, and especially on the coastline, of course, right? So we also had an earthquake there, by the way, a 5.2, but that's a few days ago. So if we only go to right now, today, and that should only have 1 because the day is young, so to speak, the 5.4, this is where we're dealing with this active volcano. And you also see here, these are the zones. You see the red lines. These are the fault lines, subduction zones. And if I zoom out, guys, we are on the Pacific Ring of Fire. There are subduction zones, fault lines, and of course there is volcanic activity. Absolutely. That's why what you're seeing here is so interesting. So Hunga Tonga, I have to mention it again, but this you already see here, it's very, very close to that fault zone. So the earthquakes and of course the volcano appears to sit on the Bismarck Sea seismic lineation. That is a transform and a spreading plate boundary zone, not a normal single fault. This is where the South Bismarck Plate and the North Bismarck Plate and the Manus microplate are being pulled, shared, and broken apart under the ocean. So this is no longer just this strange, mysterious ash cloud over the Bismarck Sea where they at first weren't sure, is it a volcanic eruption? It is. Seismic crisis around this active volcano. Aviation warnings are triggered right now. And I said Tonga matters because Tonga proved an underwater volcano does not behave like a normal earthquake to create a tsunami. A volcanic tsunami can come from an explosion. I've talked about the Masili Seamount a lot recently in the Mediterranean. So it can come from pressure waves blasting through the atmosphere and coupling into the ocean. So the question is not, did this magnitude 5.4 that we're seeing here alone create a mega tsunami? And right now there is absolutely no confirmed mega tsunami warning from this quake. This is not what I want to say. The real question that I'm hinting at is much more dangerous. What happens when stronger earthquakes start hitting around an underwater volcano that is already erupting, like this one? So the earthquake was reported near Lorengau, Papua New Guinea, in the central Bismarck Sea. So we see the location about 119 kilometers or 74 miles southeast of Lorengau, with a shallow depth of roughly 10 kilometers, that's 6.2 miles. So that puts it offshore, under the ocean, close to the area where that Bismarck Sea volcano has been active. And it's not a quiet volcano that is safely, if a volcano can be safely, sitting on land. This is a submarine volcano, so most of the eruption is hidden below the water. The signs that we see are coming from the satellites, the ash advisories, the discolored seawater, and the earthquakes. So this is why this is so serious, because we cannot really observe it right now. The eruption was already being tracked before this magnitude 5.4 earthquake hit. We have seen this large steam plume rising as high as 3,000 meters, that's almost 10,000 feet, over this eruption center. So this is almost 2 miles up into the sky. So at the ocean surface, the satellites also detected a large area of discolored water, about 9 kilometers by 11 kilometers. This is roughly a size of this carpet, 5.6 miles by 6.8 miles. So that means definitely something below the sea surface was disturbing a large patch of ocean. It's large. So we're not talking about a tiny bubble coming up. This is a huge active venting zone. And then the ash warnings escalated, we have to say. The Darwin Volcanic Ash Advisory Center warned about volcanic ash reaching around 14,000 feet or 4,300 meters moving northwest. So that matters a lot, because volcanic ash is not smoke. It's something different. It's a tiny rock and tiny glass particles coming from the volcano. So that can seriously damage aircraft engines, scratch windshields, and become overall a serious aviation hazard. And especially if you don't know that there is a volcano, right? So the VAAC Darwin is responsible for these volcanic ash warnings across regions like Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and the southern Philippines. So when they issued repeated advisories, what they're doing right now, it means the ash cloud is being taken very, very seriously. So if we now place the earthquake on the map, the red line on the USGS map, that is the key, that red fault line. This line is not just decoration on an earthquake map. It maps a major plate boundary zone that goes across the Bismarck Sea, and that is the Bismarck Sea seismic lineation. That is the name. It's about 1,000 kilometers long and so roughly 620 miles, so it's quite substantial, right? And it marks the boundaries between the North Bismarck Plate, the South Bismarck Plate, and the Manus microplate. So not one clean crack in the earth like the San Andreas Fault, for example. We're dealing with this broken underwater system of transform faults and spreading ridges. So transform faults mean that the seafloor is sliding sideways. Spreading ridges mean the seafloor is pulling apart and making room for magma. I'm always saying the pizza dough, you're stretching the pizza, it gets thin in the middle. So magma has an easier way to come to the surface. So in this central Bismarck Sea volcano area, the source of past submarine volcanic signals was described near the junction of two plate boundary segments, one transform fault segment and one oblique active seafloor spreading segment. And that is a dangerous combination, guys. I have to say that because we're dealing with sideways shearing, we're dealing with seafloor spreading. These are magma pathways, and then there's the earthquakes, and now an active underwater eruption. So this is exactly the kind of setting where the ocean can hide the real story until the signs become absolutely impossible to ignore. And that's what they are right now. So this 5.4, if we see something like this, this is not automatically the tsunami maker. So usually the largest earthquake tsunamis come from way larger, like mega thrust earthquakes that lift or drop huge sections of the seafloor, like this bathtub effect. You sit in the bathtub, you lift your leg, you create like a bathtub tsunami or a fjord tsunami like in Alaska or Norway. So of course, that changes the risk mechanism. The quake may not be the tsunami source itself. It wasn't also in the Tonga eruption, but shaking can disturb unstable slopes. It can fracture rock around this volcanic system, can open shift pathways for magma and volcanic gases, and it can happen while the magma is already moving, like it is right now. So I'm not saying the Bismarck Sea is already Tonga. It's not because a Tonga scale blast has been confirmed, but because Tonga showed the world and us that underwater volcanoes can generate tsunamis through multiple mechanisms at the same time. So let's jump back to 2022. The Hunga Tonga, Hunga Hapai eruption generated tsunami waves, and the NASA explains that volcanic tsunami mechanisms can include these landslides, pyroclastic flows, caldera collapse, deep ocean explosions, volcano-tectonic earthquakes, and atmospheric pressure waves. And the atmospheric pressure waves, that last part, is what shocked the scientists. At Tonga, the atmosphere itself became part of the tsunami system. The eruption created pressure waves that traveled outward and interacted with the ocean. And we just had a very large 7.6, I believe, I'll show you the location here, earthquake in Tonga, and we're still dealing with the aftershocks there, by the way. So the Tonga tsunami, this is why that tsunami behaved differently from a normal earthquake tsunami. And this is why these submarine eruptions are so hard to forecast and predict what they're doing. It's hard to predict what this one will be doing. So with a regular earthquake, science can look at the magnitude, the depth, the fault type, and the seafloor displacement, and then they give the tsunami warning, right? With an underwater volcano, the danger can come from the eruption column, the blast, the collapse, the slope failure, the gas pressure, the water-rock interaction. So many factors. And down there, we have nothing to surveil that, right? Not like actual Seamount at the coast of Oregon, where we're waiting for an eruption with underwater sea cables, measuring stations, cameras. No, nothing. So when people ask me, Silky, could this produce a mega tsunami? The honest answer is, first of all, a mega tsunami is not confirmed. A major tsunami is not confirmed. But the setting there is dangerously enough to watch, because this is an active underwater volcano sitting on a transform and spreading plate boundary. So now being shaken by stronger earthquakes. So, and let's talk about Papua New Guinea. It has already a very, very ending warning from history. 1998, a tsunami in Papua New Guinea was ending more than 2,000 people, and studies later, that's the scary part, linked that disaster to a submarine landslide that was triggered by an earthquake. So this is why I'm a little bit, right here. So that matters a lot, because it proves that here in this region where we're dealing with tsunami danger is not only about the biggest possible earthquake. It can also come from this unstable seafloor underneath the ocean. And this is the risk that people so often underestimate. The Bismarck Sea is absolutely not flat. It's a tectonically broken ocean basin with a lot of volcanic features, with ridges, with fault lines, and very steep underwater terrain that could collapse and create landslides. So when we're dealing with an already unstable seafloor, a moderate earthquake can matter more than people expect, not because the earthquake guarantees the disaster, but it can trigger one inside a larger unstable system. So, of course, right now, the most visual hazard that we see is the ash cloud. Aircraft definitely need to avoid that plume. The satellite monitors need to keep tracking the ocean surface right now, but the hidden hazard is below the water. Is that volcanic vent widening? Is the eruption getting shallower? Is gas pressure increasing? And are the earthquakes migrating along that lineation fault? Is the discolored water patch expanding? Is pumice appearing? It is already. How much more? So, are they signs of any seafloor collapse? That is hard to find out, right? But these are the signals, the next signals that we still need to keep watching for, and they matter so much. So if the quakes die down or stay smaller, if the ash weakens, this could come down. But if the earthquakes keep growing, if the ash is rising higher, if the ocean discoloration spreads, then the story changes closer to shizzies hitting the fizzy, of course, because that would suggest that the system is not shutting down. It's still moving, it's still cracking, it's still feeding magma or gas into that submarine vent. And that is why this update matters now. The central Bismarck Sea volcano was already erupting. The ocean surface was already changing. Ash was already threatening aviation levels. Now we have this shallow 5.4 earthquake with a significant for a volcano or nearby, right? It has struck nearby the same plate boundary system. Doesn't need to be caused by magma rising, but pressure is changing there in a way. So that does not prove the mega tsunami is coming. But this thing is evolving. It's ongoing. That is what I'm saying. And we should have learned the lesson from Tonga. So when an underwater volcano starts erupting, the most dangerous part may not be what appears above the water. And Tonga was bad, historically bad. January 15, 2022, that eruption was not a volcanic eruption. It was one of the most powerful eruptions ever observed by modern satellite and instruments. It was a VEI-5 eruption, and that tsunami field survey found a maximum run up of 22 meters, a tsunami 72 feet onto Fua Island. So that was absolutely terrifying. The eruption sent tsunami waves across the Pacific, damaged Tonga badly, covered islands in ash, cut communications, and affected a huge part of the country. World Bank assessment estimated early damages $90.4 million US. That is about 18.5% of Tonga's GDP, while later World Bank reporting put broader economic damage around $182 million US, more than 36% of the local GDP. So Tonga was the warning shot. It has given us the proof of concept, right? That an underwater volcano can produce that. So let's not ignore that. I will be on the pulse of this for you, but check out what else is going on. Really, really crazy, because there's something going on in Italy, Bella Italia, in Sicily. So that earthquake swarm, Strait of Messina, bad earthquake, 7.1. If I tell you the number, how many people were lost, a lot, close to 100,000. So watch that video there as well, and I see you soon. Bye-bye.